In this video, we are going to go over how to graph lines. The easiest way to graph lines is from slope-intercept form. So if you remember from previous classes, slope-intercept form is what we have wrote here on the board, a y equals a mx plus b. Slope-intercept form tells you two key things. The first is this little m right here. This represents your slope. That tells you what the slope of your line is, which is a key ingredient to know in order to be able to graph. The other thing slope-intercept form tells you is the y-intercept. It comes from this number right here. The y-intercept is not that number, b. It is a point on the graph, 0, comma, whatever that b value is. Here is your y-intercept. Easiest way to anger me is to tell me the y-intercept is b. That is not true. The y-intercept is a point on a graph, so it must be wrote as a point on a graph, as a coordinate with an x value and a y value. So now that we know that, we can make sure that we are not saying the slope is the y-intercept is a number. It is always a point on a graph. Let's look at an example. So here we have a y equals a negative 5x plus 2. It is already in slope-intercept form. Y is by itself on the left side. So we need to identify the two key pieces of information that we need. This number here with the x is our slope. So my m is equal to a negative 5. A slope has a rise over a run. So we need to make this guy a fraction. So we have two choices. We can make it be a negative 5 over 1, or it could be a positive 5 over a negative 1. So those are my slopes. Either way is acceptable. And we need to identify what is our slope-intercept, or our y-intercept. It comes from this point right here. The y-intercept is the point 0, 2. That is my y-intercept. Now that I know those pieces of information, I can use that to make a graph. So let's go ahead and get a graph screen on here. So here's going to be my graph. First, I'm going to plot my y-intercept. So step 1 is to plot your y-intercept. My y-intercept happened to be the point 0, 2. So 0 is my x value, so left and right 0 and up 2. So that would be this point right here. Then I use my slope, so I'm going to go either down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here, put a little dot here, and then over in the positive direction 1, which is right here. Or we go up 5, so going back to my original y-intercept, I'd go up 5, and in the negative direction 1, which would be right here. Now we need to draw a line through those points. Doing this on your notebook paper, you would need to use a ruler to get a straight edge. So here would be the line, the graph of negative 5x plus 2. Let's look at another example. So if we had a y equals a 1/3 x minus 4, it's in slope-intercept form, so we need to identify our two key pieces of information. We have a slope of a 1/3, so my slope is either 1/3, or I can make them both negative, because a negative divided by a negative still simplifies to that 1/3. So my two options when I make my slope going in both directions, I have a positive 1 over 3, or I have a negative 1 over negative 3. Then I need to identify my y-intercept. It comes from this number here. So my y-intercept is the point 0, negative 4. Now that I know all the information I need in order to graph, I can go ahead and make my graph. So first I need to plot my y-intercept. So 0, negative 4 is this guy right here. And then we need to go ahead and use our slope. So I have a 1/3, so that means up 1 over 3. That would be right here. I can do that again to fill up my board. Up 1 over 3 would be right here. I can do that again to fill up my board, which would be this guy right here. Now I need to go back to my y-intercept and go in the other direction so I can get as accurate of a line as possible. Now I'm going to go down 1 and over 3. That would be this guy right here. Down 1 over 3. That guy right there. And I can do that one more time. Down 1 over 3 would be that guy right there. Now I just need to connect the lines, and I have my line right here. So here would be the graph of y equals 1/3 x minus 4. Let's look at another example. So here we have a y equals an x plus 3. We still need to identify our two key pieces of information. Our slope is always the number being multiplied by x. There is no number there, so it is assumed to be a 1. So that makes my slope a 1 over 1 or a negative 1 over negative 1. Those are my two options, so I can go both directions from my y-intercept. Now I need to identify my y-intercept. It comes from this number here. It is always the point 0 and then that b value of 3. So now that I know my two key pieces of information, I can go ahead and make my graph. So there's my xy axis. First I need to plot my y-intercept, 0, 3. So 0, 3 is left and right 0 and up 3. So that point right there. Then we use our slope. So up 1 over 1. That's this guy right here. Up 1 over 1. That's this guy right here. Up 1 over 1. This guy right there. Up 1 over 1. This guy right here. And you can keep doing that until you fill your graph. That way you can get the most accurate line as possible. Now we need to go back and use this one. Going back to my y-intercept, I can go down 1 and in the negative direction 1. Down 1 and in the negative direction 1. Down 1 in the negative direction 1. Down 1, negative direction 1. Fill up your graph, and then we have really enough information to make an accurate line. Here is the graph of our line y equals x plus 3. Okay, let's look at another example. Here we have a y equals 5. Looks a little different. A lot of times causes confusion because what happened to my x? So let's just rewrite it so we have that information. We actually have a 0 times x, that's what made our x disappear, and we have our positive 5. Now we have the information that we need to be able to graph. So my slope comes from the number with the x. So my slope is 0 over 1, or a negative 0 over negative 1. Negative 0 is still 0. We know our slope. Now we need to find our y-intercept. It comes from this number right here. It is the point on a graph 0, 5. Now that I know the two key pieces of information, I can go ahead and make my graph. So there's my XY coordinate. Just to be different, I'm going to graph with a different color. So first we plot our y-intercept. So 0, 5 is right here. Now we use our slope. Rise over run. So I'm going to go up 0, up and down 0. I go up 0 and I go in the positive direction 1. So that's that guy right here. And I do that again. It's this guy here. And again, it's here, and here, and here, and you keep doing that over. Now we need to use the other one. So we can go in the other direction from our y-intercept. That'd be that guy, and then here, and here, and here. And we really have enough information to draw our accurate line. So here is our line right here. You can do this every time where you convert it and show your x, or you can just remember that y equals a number is always a horizontal line at whatever that number is. So y equals a number is always a horizontal line at whatever that number is. Every single time y equals a number is a horizontal line. So far in our examples, we've looked at slopes that were negative, we've looked at slopes that were positive, and now we've looked at a slope that equals 0, or in other words, a horizontal line of y equals a number. The only other option that we haven't looked at is what about vertical lines? So let's look at another example. In this example, we have an x equals a 3. There is no y to be found anywhere. So these problems, x equals a number, these are always your vertical lines at whatever the number is. So these, they have a slope, the slope is just undefined. So it's not as easy to convert this to the slope-intercept form like the others. This is one that you really need to have an understanding that an x equals a number is a vertical line. So we have the information we need to draw our graph. I think it was easier to see my line when I changed the color. So let's change the color. So x equals 3. So x is 3. 3 on my x-axis is right here. So no matter what I do, I know it's going to be a vertical line. No matter what value I choose for y, my x value is going to remain at 3. So if I choose a 5 for y, my x value is still going to be a 3. If I choose a negative 5, my x value is still going to be a 3. If I choose a 2.5, somewhere in here. If I choose a negative 2.5, somewhere in here. So I have enough information to draw my line. It's a vertical line at that x equals 3 spot. So now we've taken a look at all the possible cases that you will find in graphing lines. You have either positive slopes, which was like our very first example, or you have negative slopes, which were the second and third example, or you have a horizontal line, which was our fourth example, or you have a vertical line, which is what we just did here. So you have all the information you need to be able to graph any line that I can give you. And I will be giving them to you in slope-intercept form, so that's going to match what you've seen in this video